Welcome, all future debt-free millionaires. This is Zach Edwards with another episode of the Debt-Free Millionaire podcast and personal finance course. We are actually like 2 weeks away from being done with this season of Debt-Free Millionaire, and this is just on personal real estate. Personal finance. Next week is going to be real estate. And we're going to have a mixture of a lot of different things when we go into real estate, including some of the things that we touched on in this season, but with the aspect of real estate in there. So stay tuned. You're almost there. If you can manage to master these things that I've taught you already and use them in your daily lives, you will have money. You'll have a plethora of money. Doesn't matter what your job is. You'll have a plethora of money to put towards your next investment. Now, it won't be hundreds of thousands of dollars. All you might need is like $1,000, and you can save that up to be able to put towards an investment that you'd like to do, especially if you get out of being out of debt. If you get out of debt, you have a ton of money to put towards other things. Just think of it, all the money that you're paying towards interest is now being put towards your investments. So that's why we want to take care of your debt first and put all the money that you can towards your investments, because the more you get in investments, the more assets you have. The more assets you have that are collecting revenue, the more you can actually spend on additional investments. And when you get to a place where you're very comfortable, you can also place them on going on vacations and doing things and actually having the gadgets that we were talking about yesterday. The boats you want. The bring out another $1,000, B-O-A-T. That's right. A boat is very expensive, not just buying it, but maintaining it. And so you're going to be able to have those gadgets and those fun things because you're getting out of debt and because you're putting that money towards assets that make you a ton of money. And then you can basically sit back and enjoy the money coming in. There is maintenance for all those assets, but it is less stress than you're putting on you when you have a ton of debt and you're not getting very far because of that debt. Debt holds you back. This is why we emphasize doing that. Now, if you want to get into debt for your business, such as buying a house, getting a mortgage on your house, that's not a bad thing, especially if it pays for itself. But getting out of a personal debt is essential for getting to that point. So let's go into what we're talking about today. Again, this is week 11, day 2. Again, it's Tuesday, so day 2. Today we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people in the United States had to experience, and that was remote work. So what happened a few years ago? 2000, it was in March. I remember the day. I was actually at a convention. I was at a convention selling for historical conquest. Now, when I was at the convention, this year was supposed to be the booming year. Everything was going to take off. Everything was great. I had all of my conventions paid for, all of my conventions planned out. Everything was great. I was still single, so I could spend a lot of time doing this. And then what happened? Boom! COVID happened. COVID happened around, I can't remember the exact date, but on that day that COVID happened, everything locked down. And it was supposed to be 90 days, 3 months to spend to delay or to get rid of the infection, to get rid of COVID. Now we're 4 years later and we found out, hey, wait a second, funny enough, COVID's not gone. It's less of a struggle. Like, our bodies have become more used to it, especially those that have allowed us to have interaction with other people. Our bodies have become stronger because of it. And basically COVID became the next flu. That's all it is. It's just another flu that's out there. We had the Spanish, I was going to say the Spanish Inquisitors. The Spanish pandemic, Spanish flu. It was called something else. But the Spanish flu came out, and what happened? People were dying. It was the plague, basically, and it killed off tons of people. But then afterwards, it basically became what we are right now. And guess what? That was a COVID. This is one of the first COVIDs that was happening on record, which is like COVID-1, which is why we're now at COVID-19. That's right. COVID was basically the Spanish flu that came through and killed off tons of people. And then our bodies became normalized. And so wearing a mask right now, it's totally not needed. Because yes, you might get COVID, but your body, if you allow for some infection in, you can actually build up your antibodies. I'm not saying going full in when COVID came out, because I think there's a good amount of people that actually died because of that, especially older people and people that were having other issues. If anybody purposely went out and tried to get sick just so they could build up the antibodies, yeah, that probably wasn't the best idea. But, I wore masks every once in a while, especially for the first 3 months. Then after that, I said, you know what, forget it. I'm going out, and if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And if I'm not going to die, I'm not going to die. And luckily, I never die. Actually, funny enough, I didn't get COVID until a year after the pandemic had already ended. And so I didn't take any shots. I didn't take any of the vaccines. It wasn't necessary. And come to find out, it hurt some people and didn't help others. So I've only had COVID one time. It was not bad at all. Actually, I think I still worked through the whole thing. Now, going on, the reason why the government felt that they had to lock down is because they didn't know what it was. They hadn't experienced this in many, 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 many years. And a lot of people overreacted or stressed out because of it. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm not saying that they're right. I'm just saying that's what happened. So they wanted to lock down just to make sure that we had enough time to bring things back to normal. But because they did that, what happened to the economy? It tanked. Why did it tank? You had most of the United States not being able to work. Anyone that was working off-site, anyone that was working construction, we were all locked down. We couldn't do anything, which is why the government decided that they were going to pay people to stay home, which they only paid a small amount. And because they did that, people lost their jobs. People didn't work. And so because they did that, most people that were working had to work remotely because they couldn't go into the shops, they couldn't go into the retail stores, they couldn't go into the office. They had to work remotely, which means they worked from home. And so working from home sounds like a great idea, but there are a lot of negatives to it, especially during COVID, because during that time you couldn't go socialize with anybody. They unlocked the grocery stores because people had to eat. They unlocked other things because people had to do certain things, but you couldn't go out and do other things. Like if you wanted to go do something that's entertaining, you couldn't do it. There was no concerts out there at that point. The government was literally trying to lock down and outlaw going to church. Yes, and I could say outlaw because some of them actually put tax in the and nails in the parking lots of some of these churches. Yeah, it's funny. I thought that was a farce, and then I found that it was actually recorded in the news. Who the heck are they? That they can lock down us from going to the church, but they won't lock us down from going to the bar, to going to the liquor store? Yeah, I can understand grocery stores, but not the liquor store. And so all these things came up, and so people were working from home. So then people became normalized with working from home. And if they're working from home, then they are working what we call remotely, but they're also working inside the confines of their home, which means there's not much of a separation between home and office. And that became normalized. People are like, well, I can work from home. That's great. I can spend my time at home. That's great. I can do all these things from home. That's great. But the problem is that the socialization of people did not stay where it was before it tanked. So all those people that are working remotely, even now, especially programmers and people that do things that can be remote, are all having struggles because of this remote work. And so healthcare insurance companies and healthcare providers of any sort, companies had to work smarter and basically tell people, okay, you can work remotely, but you have to do X, Y, and Z in order for us to allow you to work remotely. But then they started saying, hey, wait a second, we're still paying for an office and people aren't working there. Wait a second, they're either going to do two things. One, they dropped their lease. They did not renew their lease, and now they don't have an office to go to. Or they said, okay, now you have to come back. And people were at a revolt. They were like, no way, I'm used to being at home. I have my office. I spent all this money putting my office together. I am not going back to the office. And so you had companies who owned offices saying you had to come back. And then you had workers who didn't want to come back to work starting to butt heads. And they butted heads, and they're still butting heads today. But what they also did is they found ways of compromising, some companies did, where you had to go in a certain amount of days during the week. And that allowed for the offices to stay open. Well, the problem is, if you still have people working remotely, that seems efficient, except when people work remotely, they are not as efficient as they would be as if they worked in the office. Yes, there's a little bit of socializing, but at least they get to know their coworkers. But if they're at home, they can Zoom call people. That's not socializing with neighbors. That's not socializing with your coworkers. And if they're at home, they have all these different distractions. And if they're at home, there are some ways, but most of the time, there's no ways of actually checking if that person's actually working. So there's a big draw that came between companies. Are we going to keep our people working remote, or are we going to bring them back to the office? Some have basically said, you know what, why my hands clean? I'm no longer going to have an office. And now they're all remote. But a lot of those companies are actually hurting. They're actually failing at certain things. This is why all the big ones, Google, Facebook, Oracle, you name it, most of the big companies have all mandated a certain amount of time in the office. Because one, they want to be able to socialize with you. They want you to socialize with your coworkers so you get to know each other and becomes a family again. It was not a family when everyone was separated for not just 90 days, but like a year or even 2 years. And now everyone's starting to bring people back together. A lot of let's just say the teachers did not want to go back to school. They were very comfortable working remotely. And so some states actually sided with the teachers, and the kids had to work from home instead of going back to school. So I'm in Missouri. Our schools actually opened up, and then our kids went back to school. Yes, they actually had a whole year without going to school. But as soon as that happened, as soon as they got the kids back into school. They could have done it earlier. And our kids, mine included, were hurt because of that. Because they would not allow them to go back to school. After the 90 days. The 90 days was summer. So they could have come back if they followed the guidance that they set out originally. But then they continued it. And they had all this power over everyone because they were in control and you had to stay in your home. So what happens now? Okay. So what happens now is we have some remote workers and some non-remote workers. And some people are looking for the jobs that are remote. I don't think you're going to have many people that are going to say, I just want non-remote work. Now they say, I want this work, which does entail going to an office. That's one thing. But there's been this drive for people to stay home and work. Well, the problem is not in all industries can do that. Now, another thing that's great, if you can find a job where you can work from home, it also means you can work from travel. It means you can go off to Argentina and pull in a paycheck because you're working in the United States and be able to work in a lower income area, lower cost of living area. Well, the other problem with that is there's certain problems that do come up. I can't say all the problems that come up, but there's regulatory issues. There are cultural issues. There are connectivity issues. There's a lot of different issues that come up being a world traveler, but it is also really nice that you can actually go and work at a local cafe, bring your laptop to a hotel. You can travel around and you can still be on the clock, which is a huge distraction for a business. They do not want you to be remote in that way. But there's a different type of remote that's actually become very valuable for a lot of workers. So as you know, California is a very expensive place to live. As you know, California has some very lucrative jobs. So what happens if you can work remotely from Missouri, which has one of the lowest cost of living, and taking a income from a place in California? That's like huge amounts of savings that you can have. Before COVID, I actually knew someone that flew in and worked Monday through Friday in California and flew back where his family was in Missouri. That was the old remote working, where you actually did have to go in the office and then come home during the weekends. And his family loved doing that for a time because he was making a lot of money. But then they decided, you know what, you're gone too much. And they ended that. This kind of remote working though, if you can find a job that works remote, if you can get into an industry that allows you to work remote, then think of it this way. You can be living in another state, probably near family, and getting a job in another state. Now, if you do that, you have to understand this one thing. As a business owner, that business owner has to hire you in that state. If they hire you in that state, they have to follow those regulations. If they hire you, they also have to get a business license for that state. If they hire you, they have to follow that state's regulations. And any money that is created because of your work is technically taxed by that state. So if you think, I need to go pick up my son. If you think that you're going to be able to work somewhere else in another state, and any company is going to hire you because it doesn't matter where you live, you're wrong. It actually does. And because of all those regulations, a lot of states are not making those changes, and a lot of states are forcing businesses to register in their state. There's becoming this big issue with states and having this remote work. So just so you know, it doesn't always work out that way. But if something was to happen, another pandemic, I don't think the United States was ever going to lock you down again. There would be a huge revolt that happened because of the experience we had 4 years ago. So they can't do it anytime soon. Now, for those that want to work remote, you can look for jobs that allow you to work remote. But also remember that that person has to register in that state and create a business in that state and be taxed and regulated in that state. So it does not always work out. Some states are allowing you to do that without your company being regulated. So that does happen. Okay. Now, what are some of the conveniences that come from working remote? Well, I could come to work. I could be on this podcast and you could see my nice attire up here, and I could be wearing shorts, or I could be wearing pajama pants down there. You don't actually get to see, as the person in the video, how I'm actually dressed. So I could be very comfortable when I'm dressed. But you know what happens when someone dresses very comfortably over time? Their mind actually becomes lazier than they would have if they actually had to dress, make themselves look really good, and go out to work. It is actually a thing. It's a scientific proven fact that if you dress up in business attire, or how you would dress up before, your mindset will be more in the business than it will be you relaxing at home. If you are actually working in front of a desk in an office, you are actually having a mindset of working in an office, being professional and getting things done. If you're at home, you're going to be distracted. You're going to be able to sit on your bed or sit in your couch. You're going to be doing all these things. You're going to fall asleep. Oh, I'm still on the clock though. But you're not. So there's a lot of ins and outs that are happening. Most of the Fortune 500 companies are not allowing their people to work remotely anymore. They used to, but now it's changing. So these are the different things that are happening right now. So you need to be able to understand what we're going through in your hope to have a good working environment and to be able to go to work. So what we've basically done in this workbook is we've actually put together the pros and the cons of working remotely from the worker's point of view. Then we've had you look at the other direction, the company's point of view of working remote, pros and cons. You need to be able to come up with those insights and look at them, compare them. Now, there are a lot of negatives for you as an employee when you work remote, such as, like we already mentioned, I feel very comfortable in wearing pajama pants or a t-shirt that I would not be able to wear in the office. Now I can change for video conferences and I can put my regular stuff back on afterwards. Here's the problem. It is statistically proven that when you go out and work, that you will actually feel more positive. You will feel more energetic if you get dressed. If you get dressed in the business attire that your office would see, you're actually going to become more professional mentally and be able to get more things done. Here's another statistic that's interesting. Statistics shows that employees who eat healthy are 25% more likely to have higher job performance. So most of the time, if you are going out and working in an office, you're either going to go out and eat, which can give you a better selection of food, or you're going to stay home, or you're going to bring a lunch. Sorry, if you're going to work in an office, you're going to bring a lunch. Most of the time, you're going to actually think of what you're going to eat and make it healthy. If you stay at home, there's chances where you're going to eat cereal for lunch. You're going to eat cereal for every meal. You're going to eat while you're working. If you're not working to eat healthy, your job performance is going to tank. The same survey also found that employees who exercise for at least 30 minutes 3 times a week are 15% more likely to have higher job performance. If you're staying in the house, you're not going to be as healthy as you would. If you're not as healthy as you would, you wouldn't have as high job performance as well. So these are all things that the employer has to govern, has to think about when it comes to letting you work remotely or making you come back into the office. When they're hiring, you're going to say, I'm going to work remote. And your employer's going to say, you're going to come to the office. And you're going to say, I'm not going to work for you. And the employer's going to say, well, I'm going to find someone else. Well, there's 2 problems that happen there. One, that employee who's looking for a remote job might not find a job. On the other side, the employer might not find an employee because everyone wants to work remote. There has to be a compromise. We cannot keep butting heads. So some of these companies have made it 2 days in, 3 days out. 3 days in, 2 days out. Okay, if that's the way it's got to be, that's the way it's going to be. But the more we can get people to work in the offices again, the more healthy our employees are going to be. And the healthier they are, the better job performances they're going to have. The more professional they act, the better job performances they're going to have. So there are a lot of negatives that come with this. So if you work remotely, just a recommendation based off science, dressing the attire of your business, even if you're not going into the office, is important. Maybe not even the full attire, but not living in your pajamas. It's the worst thing you can do. Your job performance will go down, your health will go down, and you'll go downhill. Eating healthy. If you're not eating healthy, yeah, the same thing goes. You're going to have issues in your life. If you're not going to go to the office and be moving around, you need to go exercise. You need to eat healthy. You need to do things that get you up and running and healthy, keeping your body healthy to keep your performance up. If your performance lags, you will be the first person on the chopping block. And it's not because of, oh, I'm working remotely, so they don't want me. No, a lot of the companies are working remotely, but your job performance is tanking. If your job performance is tanking, you're losing the money. If you're losing the money, there is no reason for them to keep you hired. So keep these things in mind. If you are going to work remotely, you need to keep yourself healthy, keep yourself dressed well, keep yourself working professional. This is working remote. And actually, I had a few other pictures and I totally got off. This is not working remote. If we get into a relaxed position, we're going to have issues. Now, if this is a temporary thing where you do this maybe an hour out of your workday, okay. But if you're working like that, for me, I know I'm going to fall asleep. If I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm going to fall asleep. There are some jobs that you can actually do that. If you have a place that is dedicated to working, you will actually work in that dedicated area. If you find a place, now this is a person that works woodwork. If they work it from home, great. But remember, you still need to get out and do stuff. Eat healthy. In this kind of job, you have to work in the attire of your business because you don't want to have all that sawdust on your pajamas. This is also a negative because family life sometimes takes over for your professional life. And if you're taking care of this child or family members or having other distractions in your life, you're not going to get the work done. So consider how you set up your life. If you're going to work from an office, great. You will be healthier. You'll dress the attire. If you work remotely, prepare to work remotely and do it healthy Do it wise. Be successful. The more you're successful, the more money you'll make. The more money you'll make, the more debt you can pay off. The debt you can pay off, the more you can invest for the future. And the more you can invest in the future, the better your life will be when you have the more money to spend. The more you can give out and be generous with others. So, if you work remotely, please do. Have fun with it. But at the same time, be responsible, be intentional on what you do. So thank you so much for joining me for this Debt-Free Millionaire podcast, and we will catch you next time. Tomorrow will be a grab bag of different things, so I can't wait to share it with you. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.